But they can't do what you do.
Yeah, but we can
They
teach
can
you.
speak Japanese.
Oh, yeah.
They can
Yes,
read
it's true. I was
Japanese.
born in America. I do not speak Japanese. Mom and dad speak Japanese. 27 generations of priests in Japan speak Japanese. I'm the only one who doesn't.
But you do the Scottish accent wonderfully.
Which confuses my family to no end when I started speaking that. Just, I was born in Texas, took like 4 or 5 years to get rid of this accent, went back to Japan. It was Konnichiwa, watashi wa Tadao Tomomatsu desu, genki y'all. I'm surprised it didn't throw me out of the country. So, having said that,
why didn't your parents teach you Japanese?
Okay, so off topic, and we'll explain that in a minute. The short answer is I was born in Texas. I lived in the Midwest. There's very little use of doing Japanese because I was also learning Spanish, French, and German, which is nothing to the Japanese because in Japan, when you are there, you learn Japanese like we learn English, then they learn English, and then, depending if you go to liberal arts or sciences, you learn French or you learn German. Dad beat both Mom and I out because Dad and I used to talk in German in front of Mom so we could figure out what to do for her birthdays or anniversaries. Mom and I would speak French, and both of them would speak Japanese in front of me so I wouldn't know what was going on. However, Mom and I made a joke once in French. Dad started laughing. That's when we discovered they made him take French in Ohio State. So, damn it! They're sneaky.
Weren't there Japanese schools though?
Huh?
Were there Japanese schools at all?
Technically, no, not in those days. But
okay, because I know when I lived in Southern California.
Yeah, but I was in Illinois and Texas. Texas.
Chicago's got enough of.
Yeah, not much at the time. But anyway, we'll talk about the side stuff later. So,
I was just curious.
Oh yeah. Well, sorry. Well, I'll ask the sideways questions. Let's save it for later. I actually have to talk about our important work here. So, amongst the many works that we have going on, we have reports on science and climatology. Oh, and I should mention, unfortunately, both Dr. Tomomatsu and Professor Tomomatsu have passed away, unfortunately, and it's my job to take over and try to make sure the world is better. Many of the research works that we involved in is involving how to, for example, cool off the oceans aspect, possibly reanimate, rehydrate, and recreate global ice caps, preventing hurricanes, typhoons, fixing fire-burnt areas, etc., etc., etc. Yes, we have copyrights and some patent pendings on these, and I realize I'm a co-author, so I'm sort of an author with all this. It's kind of weird in my. It's not really, as my dad says, I am science, you are fiction. And I'm like, okay. So, what I'm here to talk about most recently is a very important topic, COVID, unfortunately. Due to various reasons, as you know, COVID started around 2019. Because Dr. Tomomatsu was watching a lot of the news programs and other reports, Japan caught on early that something weird was happening in the Wuhan province. Speculations and then finally other reports were coming in. Japan had a jump on everyone for several months before the actual news reports came out later in that year and eventually led to the pandemic declaration. In doing so, the research that we were able to achieve because various science resources and governmental health resources were available, Dr. Tomomatsu has discovered how this might be spreading and immediately implemented an idea using his science and technology and engineering on what could be done to eliminate COVID from surface areas. Almost immediately, realizing there was a connection once we discovered that basically, and this is a really bad picture, this is Tadao drawing, that the COVID virus had aspects of it that involved RNAs that are injectable into the human body cells. So, in thinking of this, he started working on a chemical formulation that would hopefully stop or prevent the RNA system from attacking a human body. So, we have developed all this information, and it's a little complicated. Just give me a minute. In doing so, we had written up the reports. Scientifically, it's all sound. Chemically speaking, from what we understand, the COVID itself is an RNA-based system. The mild difference that was discovered from the science resources in both Japan and other communities of that area was that opposed to other viruses, technically COVID here is a skinless virus, which means other viruses have coats and skins, and you break the skins by using rubbing, friction, whatever. And when you use hand sanitizers or alcohols, it destroys the system. It's not ready for it. It's like us. You puncture our lungs and you fill us with alcohol and we get really drunk. Not like at the convention upstairs, but so this is the idea. However, the overall, and this is Tadao's flash done thing, it's like a buckyball, or it's like a soccer ball that doesn't have everything, but it has the hardened points. Inside is all the RNA, and the outside is the tendrils that can just shove everything in there, and that's what causes the changes. All right, now, let me do... So, we had sent out all this information and involving between 2020, just about when the declaration was made that this is a worldwide pandemic. Our basic solution is using a quaternary something, which is in the other paper, which I forgot to write down, in order to eliminate COVID from surfaces, because alcohol-based products made the things jump. It just went to a hibernation mode or it went to a feeding mode, dormant, then not dormant, and then boom, this is why we have so much COVID in the areas. We developed a bubbler system for most people, which means it's like a very weird HEPA filter with filters in it, but a liquid medium. So when air is sucked in and possibly shedding of any COVID viruses for hospitals and or rooms, it would go in, bubble through, and it would be killed by the various amounts. That's also in the notes I have to bring you later. I'm trying to get to the other important part, so pardon me on that one. When it flows out, that means you can also test the filters that come in or out to see how much COVID has been loosed in a room. Meanwhile, it will clear the room of said COVID, and you can analyze it all you want. This was expected because COVID sticks to everything at that point, even silicone, and there's a good number of shedding that could be happening in hospitals and down other people. So there was that. Afterwards, we had already initiated an international clinical trial with many people, and I admit mostly in Japan, of utilizing oligosaccharides and bifiduses. Dr. Tomomatsu's expertise is in oligosaccharides, as shown in Food and Technology magazine from 1911. This is part of the idea of what an oligosaccharide is, and it helps in aging. Basically, here's the whole kit and caboodle. You as a human being have the possibility of creating an immunity system for your body against COVID and other COVID variants. We're not against boosters, we're not against anything else that will help, but the main concern that Dr. Tomomatsu had was, around the globe, people are suffering not only from having COVID, but the families who are affected from COVID, and also our frontline workers, people who are on the rescue services, etc. It's almost impossible because the current system will supply and demand has been the biggest problem. Outside our first world system, even the second world, many countries do not have the available science facilities, the medical facilities, or even storage facilities, and or be able to afford many of the variable vaccines available from pharmaceutical companies. The idea of using oligosaccharides, bifiduses, and your own body can create X amount of things. But the important part was, these are foods that will help your body produce these things. It's not anything extraordinary. It's just a slight upscale in a healthier lifestyle, and it can happen around the globe. Many of the foods that I have listed soon can be found globally, meaning third world countries, first world, second world can eat, ingest, enjoyably, various amounts of foods to produce what I'm about to talk to you now, giving you a baseline defense, and then gives you the opportunity when a vaccine is available as you prefer, to either take a vaccine or eat more better food. I like to eat the better food system myself. And I will now set this on this. Nope, that's not it. Technology, actors. So, hey, come on. Producers. What? Try again.
There you go.
No, but it's supposed to start the slideshow. Okay, we'll just leave this one at the moment. Okay, so here's what I understand. Sorry, I forgot how dry the hotel was. Here's the thing. Your body ingests food, and you can have oligosaccharides and bifiduses, meaning probiotics, etc. For example, something like a general probiotic you can find in any store. Eating foods will produce what is known as macrophages, as well as fructose-6-N quaternary phosphates, or fructose-6-N phosphates. These are things that are naturally produced in your body by eating things like oatmeal or, I'm sorry, thank you.
I know better.
I know. I'm embarrassed. So anyway.
Don't be.
The foods that can be produced are, stop that. For example, things like barley, spelt flour, wheat bread, white breads, broccoli, vegetable sprouts, garlic, onions, leeks, legumes, beans, nuts, almonds, cashews, fruits. And amongst these are also included things like okras or artichokes or other buckwheat-like products, things that can be found mostly globally in various ways and forms. Also, slightly fermented foods, such as sauerkrauts or natto, kimchi, pickles, yogurts, Yakults, and everything else. And these are just normal parts of your body, normal parts of everyday living. If you include these...
Is there a difference between live culture and not live culture yogurt for these purposes?
For these purposes, nothing. It's whatever you have available. You can have some fresh yogurt. You can have a probiotic that has a similar effect, dried or otherwise. It's...
So with the yogurt, it's the fermentation process that's important, not what's still in there or not?
A little of both.
Okay.
Again, as I say, unfortunately, Dr. Tomomatsu passed. I vaguely understand everything. I am not a scientist, and I can't even say I even play one on TV, because I haven't yet. So,
you want to, though.
Yay. So, what happens is you eat things that, as I joke, make you gassy. The oligosaccharides go through your stomach acid systems and then creates... this. Now, macrophages work with your body's white blood cell defense system and tags any COVID viruses around. It says here where it also has a bit of a glomping effect. Afterwards, your body produces the particular oligosaccharides in your guts, etc., and produces the fructose-6-N phosphates, which is technically this, which is a fructose-6-N quaternary phosphates, and it goes up against. Oh, yeah, that's in theory the depiction of a COVID virus that's out of control. This worked better in practice. Anyway. There we go. Come on. It's a little hard to see, sorry. So, this depiction over here is an RNA which has cytosine uracils and guarins. And over here is what your body produces as a fructose-6-N phosphate. Because of it's going through your body system through acids and through probiotics, it also creates what is known as a positive and negative bonds on the ends, which then attaches itself to these particular RNA cells, which have already been tagged by macrophages, saying here, this is where the bad guys have their weak points, lock on. I can't believe I just said that.
Fire phasers.
Fire phasers. And this is where they lock on positive, negative, positive, in order to do this. So this, for example, is, as we said before, a very bad example of a COVID virus. This is what we know as the fructose-6-N phosphates. And it will come in and it will attach. I didn't do any Velcro. But basically, it's like a pitchfork or a fork that attaches to all the extraneous parts of the tendrils of a COVID virus. Meaning, it goes everywhere. It goes here, it goes there, it goes everywhere, and it cannot take it and inject it into any regular human cells of any sorts. So it's stuck. It's like taking a soccer ball and sticking a lot of pitchforks in the thing. Now, your body has the ability to then just take it out via 1 and 2 by the sheer force of your blood plasma, by the sheer force of your mountains. Now, the side benefit on this is if you've already had COVID, you still have various amounts of the virus RNA attached into your cells. Same thing is that the pitchforks will come in. If you've got a tendril that's still sticking out of one, and it will theoretically pull out as much as it can through number 1 and through number 2, meaning, waste extraction. Thank you. That's the. Why didn't you tell me that earlier?
Urine and stool.
Urine and stool. Thank you. So that's what can happen. Meaning, people who've had who are on ventilators or people who've had long-term COVID have a better chance of recovery. Now, in our international clinical trial, we've had several of the people who have taken given this information. They started as they were in the worst parts of starting COVID, having apples or eating more oatmeal, et cetera, et cetera. Some of them got to the point where it wasn't quite soon enough, but they ended up on a ventilator. Ironically, or superiorly, they ended up being off a ventilator in a much shorter time than anyone ever expected. 2-3 days at one report. Same said person had to go through breathing therapy afterwards as prescribed by the FDA, meaning they go in and they get tested and see how they're progressing. Long-term COVID people have a very difficult time, also involves muddling and not thinking, etc. One of our clinical trial people, of many, went in and surprised the physical therapy, breathing therapy people because their breathing capacities was 70% better than anyone else who had been on a long-term ventilation and still suffering more from COVID. It was explained that this is what they did, and they went, I think that actually will work. Did they spread this word to anyone else? No. So there's many different possibilities. Now, we created the whole file, and it is copyrighted, a patent pending thing because the government doesn't understand a few million things. But we sent this out across the world and to as many states, cities, and health departments as possible. In doing so, the good news is that we received thank you letters from the governments of France and Spain, of all places, saying thank you for this information, it's very valuable, and they sent it on to their respective health departments, which I suspect are still working on this because they have their own ways of testing it. We also suspect that Germany has some say in this. Their numbers went down for a while. And they're not saying anything because, well, honestly, the German chancellor has to be a chemical engineer. She's probably not telling anyone that she found it.
She's not German chancellor anymore.
Well, I know, but I mean, at the time it was. And this was 1 year ago. But we're very proud to say that we've had at least congratulatory and thank yous from other countries who appreciate at least the effort. Where else was I going? So, as I said before, this is how it works. COVID has all these, and this is your fructose 6. And it sticks into everything, it can't go anywhere, and that's where we are. Now,
can I back you up and ask, you were talking about macrophages.
Yes.
Eosinophils and neutrophils.
Mm-hmm.
How are those working in and along with this? Are they grabbing the pitchforks, or what are they doing?
Okay, hang on.
Because normally they're, go ahead.
So what's going to happen at this point is, for example, your COVID virus is sticking around, floating around.
Right.
And usually in the normal healthy ways of your body, your white blood cells or other types of macrophages, et cetera, start tagging, this is the thing to tag.
Those are macrophages. The eosinophils and neutrophils are the macrophages.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. She's correct.
Which makes me wonder about people with eosinophilic asthma.
As far as we know, because several of the people who've had COVID, of our clinical trial people across the globe, several have had what you just said.
Eosinophilic asthma.
And who have
other respiratory
problems. However, it has not interfered with any of their respiratory previous problems. What we're also saying is that in our research we discovered that people who cannot take a booster shot or anything, immunocompromised in some cases. The only thing that popped up that we couldn't figure out is people who have kind of an IBS problem because some of the foods trigger an IBS reaction, but taken in certain amounts and in distances, maybe is better. We don't have the full story on that one, unfortunately. As I said, Dr. Tomomatsu passed, and we'll talk about that one in a minute. But so things glomp onto the tendrils or the actual COVID itself, which is a signal to the fructose 6 and phosphates to go here. It's like pointing a laser pointer at it so the missile can go in and go bang. So the pitchforks can go in and go poof. And that's what's the whole point of actually having the extra
So
microbeads.
those are basically way pointers. It's like,
Yeah.
over here guys, over here.
But they also have the ability, because of, as I understand it, they're kind of gelatinous, amoebic sort of format. They kind of just, it's like taking a slime and then it clamps on, and that's also
And anything else that hits the slime can weasel on through the slime too.
Right, exactly. Or it being a signal thing.
Right.
There was a science fiction show that did that once, and I can't remember what it was, which would have been perfect for me to remember at this point. So I'm going to take a pause here and there. Any questions so far before I continue? Anything? Does it make sense to you all, or does it not make sense? If it does make sense, I'll try to help out. Okay. So this is just basically you being able to, every morning, every other morning, have some oatmeal with some
Apples,
nuts,
raisins, and brown sugar.
apple raisins and brown sugar. Or in the evenings, you can have a brat and some extra sauerkraut, or enjoy a snack of yogurt every other day. We're not saying it's helpful if you do something every day. It takes a few days for your body to build up this particular amount of compounds, which also help against, as far as we know, and basically tested for, other variants of COVID. And all the international clinical trial participants, sorry, I'm still working on California time, my brain hasn't fired on full thrusters. That, I completely forgot what I just did. Sorry. It takes a few days to build up this sort of thing and keep going. To keep it going, you need to still replenish it. It's like making sourdough bread. You have a starter, you just need to keep going every once in a while. You can skip a day or two, but it really helps your body do prevention or help you against a COVID thing.
Is there a certain volume of food, of those types of foods you need to take?
There's actually a thing, thank you for asking, where did I put my glasses? I hate my new contact prescriptions that make me have to use glasses to read everything.
It's called getting older.
Shh. It's okay.
I'm allergic to retinol 5.
Okay, new technology. So the advice, and it depends, and we had geared this not only because it could be possibly used and easier to use worldwide, but it was also geared for use for people who have had almost or are on ventilation systems or have a severe case of. And where did I put it? This is the part where Dad's scientific brain is so much better than mine.
You know what?
No, because it's a little.
It's in his scratching notation thing.
Well, no, I mean this is what we presented to, and I should explain in just a minute, because maybe it's the other report.
Is it just as simple as an apple a day? And is it as simple as an apple a day to keep the doctor away?
More or less, yes, but there was a more specific reason that. All right, the idea was an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And I know people do not appreciate everything like okra or sauerkrauts, but it's a certain amount of foods every day, every other day. It doesn't have to be, you can skip a day or two, but it really helps and it improves your overall health anyway. Oligosaccharides is a beneficial thing for aging and digestion and a huge number of things. Just look up the Food and Technology about 1984, 85, and there's an oligosaccharide paper. You can also find it online. If you are in a hospital, the idea was you can get oligosaccharide syrups, which are made usually from beet, sugars, etc., and a teaspoon, 10 milligrams, depending on what the doctor thinks you have. Ingesting the oligosaccharides on a certain basis, even if you're kind of on the ventilator, will help you start processing out as much COVID as your body will say, hey, let's go. There's only 1 or 2 negatives we may have discovered, but because of the clinical trial problem we have in the United States, the FDA wants one that's more specific, geared towards the United States. We have discovered people who smoke heavily or who are very, very overweight against their body type have a harder time surviving COVID overall. It's kind of a given, but it's not really been widely talked about. Even if they would try to take oligosaccharides at a late rate, therefore, one of our other theories is something I won't talk about because it's too weird. It's complicated, and that one's just slightly out of my league. Sorry. How about I get back to you on the this?
Well,
I've
that's okay.
already explained. But
But
basically,
it doesn't mean you have to have, what you're saying though is it doesn't mean you have to have a whole meal of just the one thing.
no, you do
Or
not have to
3
have a
meals
whole
of it, just a small amount.
a small amount. Now,
Okay.
in particular, for example, I was showing this. This is a general probiotic. Dad's biased because it's from a Japanese scientist. It's called KE99. It's a KCI Shirota. It's also found in things like Yakults. And overall, it's actually just normally found in yogurts and other, even miso soups has a certain amount of these. And it's not bad having these type of things every day. But you don't have to have a ton of it in the morning and every day. You don't have to eat a pound of it. But it's a thing you can incorporate throughout your meal planning system, throughout the weeks, throughout the months. It's wide and variable. I would advise not so much natto, which is a fermented soybean thing, because that's an acquired taste. But Japan loves it. People in Japan tend to eat more fermented foods like miso soups, etc. And the miso soup is a very widely used, miso paste is widely used. You can use it as a marinade, you can use it as a soup. Some of us even accidentally put it in our shake. That's interesting. Yes?
If you're looking for a way to add the oligosaccharide syrups, there's one called oligodang. It's used in Korean cuisine to sweeten and thicken dishes. It's similar to similar viscosity and sweetness to honey, but it's a neutral flavor, not a honey flavor.
Okay.
Not floral.
Thank
So
you.
for cooking, there's
Yes,
choices
there's ways to cook and involve it, or to leave raw and involve it.
If you need-
So this is a manual go through because it's not letting me do the slideshow. So these are 4 examples, things from Japan and otherwise. As you see, there's a Chiyabani yogurt drink. These are various numbers of little snack candies.
You can say they're like fruit snacks?
Fruits. Some of them are fruit snacks.
Okay.
Some of them are the little jelly snacks.
Yeah.
Some of them are otherwise. But these are all things that contain an oligosaccharide, for example. You can get also from soybeans in general, eating edamame, etc. Chicory is also an interesting factor that helps provide oligosaccharides. Another probiotic. So yeah, I'm biased because I can get some Cafe Du Monde coffee. As well as these are the Go-Gurt drink snacks for the kids.
Yeah, the thing is, for diabetics, oligosaccharides do not increase blood sugar. They're
And
not
that's an
actually
important-
digestible,
Right.
but yeah.
Good.
Which is also important. And these are other things. Now this is a general probiotic called Pearls. Just a random thing I threw in, as well as oligo-CC. Now this is a Japanese beet syrup, which is referred to as an oligosaccharide syrup, as well as miso soups, the probiotics. CC lemon is kind of like a Kool-Aid-like drink, but not really. It's tangy, and it has oligosaccharide. These are fruit jellies. Over here is marinated asparagus, which you can find at the Costco World Market. But any asparagus will do. Asparagus goes really great with a lot of foods.
Oh, it does.
And I'm going to be bad. Yes, you can have the white asparagus with mayonnaise. I don't usually promote mayonnaise with everything because I would just eat the whole thing. And buckwheat noodles. There's buckwheat bread. There's also instant bowls of buckwheat noodles from Japan. You can find this in other places. Other providers. Japan is lucky. They have Coca-Cola Plus, which has oligosaccharide substitute.
Yeah, the other thing you're going to want to be careful about with oligosaccharides, like many saccharides, because they are not digestible, things like lactulose, we use it in the hospitals as a laxative.
Yes, I understand.
It can cause, well, I'm talking more to them.
Sorry.
About it. But it can cause diarrhea and bloating, so you want to be careful with your choice of probiotics, because some probiotics are very beneficial to people who tend to have diarrhea, and this is getting into the stuff about people with IBS and Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. You're going to have to balance, if you do this, if you have those types of issues, you're going to have to pick a probiotic that's actually aimed at helping resolve diarrhea instead of causing it to not have those two things gang up and make things worse coming out of it.
Yes.
I noticed also that a lot of them have oxalates in them. And speaking from somebody that's had 13 procedures because of kidney stones, on that list you showed there's only 4 things that I could even eat.
Well, that's a very minor list and available from a particular website, which it was just the most immediate available. The actual list is much longer. Like I said, we have artichokes, we have asparaguses, and probably, yes, I should say yes, it's something you should watch out for. But it's a much bigger list. There's just an immediate list available for the purposes of this presentation. Because like I said, I have a huge list, and I just trying hard to narrow it down to something that's
Commonly available?
available and not like, you know, foreign. See, even trail mix, nuts, artichokes, oatmeal, other foods, other things. Yeah, there are a couple of repeats. Yeah, this is Dad's dinosaur eggs, so I'm just showing this because it's weird. Rice-a-roni and other rice-a-roni. And this, believe it or not, I'll be wearing later. This is my dad's actual jacket, which looks a lot like Peter Davison's jacket, which is the problem because Mom knew I liked Doctor Who, so she sewed on the red piping, and I wore it, and Dad said, "Hey, that kind of looks like my old high school jacket." And Mom said, "It is." And he went, "Huh? You want it back, Dad?" "No, it's okay, you keep." So anyway, and Dad being silly, Mom being... Anyway, so part of the good... sorry. The part of the good news in all of this, and not to put it too oddly or mildly... Yeah, that's also a different version of an oligosaccharide glucoside bond, positive, negative charges in order to affix to. So the good news, and this is what I'm trying to explain now, we sent this up globally. We sent it to the United Nations, we sent it to the World Health Organization, we sent it to other countries available, and we also sent it to the FDA and the White House. Now, the previous administration wasn't paying attention to us as much. As soon as they left and the current administration took over, within like 5 days of them, I started getting calls from the FDA, NIH, CDC, etc., saying, "We're really interested in this. We're going to phase 3 you guys," meaning they're going to approve emergency approval of the use of this. We would, however, like to talk to Dr. Tomomatsu to have more information. He unfortunately just passed away late in 2020, and I almost said, "You just missed him." Regardless of what happens, just so you know, the government is happy in considering that, and no longer immediate phase 3 because our international clinical trial does not meet the standards of the clinical trial for the FDA in the United States. That's understandable, and I'll be honest, half of that research is what Dad was covering, which is all in Japanese, and I don't read Japanese. We're stuck. I'm stuck, so I'm doing this. However, they asked, "What do you want to do this?" I said, "I'm more than happy to freely give this for the benefits of approval at some point and the helping of the world, not just the United States." Because approval from the FDA in the United States goes a long way across the other world. I explained that France and Spain has already done this. They happily took the information and research and divided it into 2 different research departments. Typical government way, I haven't heard a thing back from them. However, they have given the go-ahead for a access system, access numbering, and tailoring. Meaning, if I can get a clinical trial going, I'm not asking you guys for help on this one, but once I get it going, I can just send them the code and the title description and the access code that they've given me, and they'll run it through. And cross your fingers all after that. Here's the ironic thing that's not too much of a giveaway, but part of the access code they gave me is related to Star Trek. Take a wild guess.
NCC.
Almost that, but don't give it away. But it's not quite that. According to the old canonical lore, 1701 was not the original number of the original Enterprise. It was something else, and it's for a different ship. That's the different ship number. That means it's turning into the Enterprise. So I'm hoping and crossing my fingers, and I don't want to kirk it all up. That's mostly it for now, unless you want to know about the other things we're doing. But do you have any questions, comments, or just wanted to tell me I'm crazy?
But the other question is, it's really a nutraceutical, isn't it?
You're going to have to define that for me. It's too early in the morning.
Yes.
No, nutraceutical means it's really outside the FDA, since it's not really a drug. So, still would be good to have the trials, because then you can actually have claims against it, and
treatment protocols can include things like that.
Yeah.
You're very correct on all this, but the problem is that in the discussion through everything I've had to go through is it needs to be approved by the FDA and
Yeah.
some other. Also,
Because it's the
to
Food
make
and
any
Drug
claim to it, yeah.
Administration.
so yes. Now, the trick of it is that the probiotics is what caught their attention and is part of the solution to everything else.
Yeah.
One of the subsets of our research is for people who are not actually able to physically eat things, there's a possible development of other type of therapeutic for it to work. I'm trying not to explain too much on that one because it's further down the line than I care to go for until we get this initial look. It works. Your reasoning, your trial, your way of doing this.
Just a shame this actually makes sense compared to cattle dewormer. So this is
Well, it's much more helpful, and in actuality, it's also a more healthier lifestyle in the long run for a majority of the people in the United States and around the world.
And for people who can't actually eat, G-tube, J-tube.
Yeah.
Now, they see the difference of that would mean that you would have a lower prevalence of COVID in Japan and Korea due to their diet. Would that be true?
Mostly true, yes.
But the Western diet is in East Asia now too, so.
They can't hear you through the mask.
Sorry, the Western diet is also in East Asia now because there's McDonald's and Burger King and KFC in mainland China, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, etc.
The shorter answer is that a majority of the people who are on our clinical trial in Japan have not caught COVID, tested COVID currently, or have COVID because they've continued to use more of a traditional Japanese style way of eating. The other reason there's more odd COVID number of cases in Japan in different ways is because, just like America, there's some stupid people who don't care about things and not understanding. Also, there's a more influx heavily of foreigners coming in, bringing in COVID and not saying anything, testing is a little lax. And in some cases, the government is the same as governments around the globe. It's slow, they don't understand, and the problem is that the person they really want to talk to who can speak Japanese has just left. You just missed him, I'm sorry. Even my mother would be yelling at me because, she's the professional translator. So, you had a question?
I've got a couple. The first one though is, are you actually looking for people that have had or have long-term COVID and haven't been able to get out of it?
Theoretically, yes, but that's not the actual problem we're currently having. Because, honestly, it's just me, and believe it or not, the FDA completely understands it's just me, that I'm not big pharma, I'm not a huge company, and they've given me an actual ability to get a grant, for example. But I don't know how to run things, and I don't know how it's going to work with that, and I don't know how to do the clinical trial in the way the United States wants to do it. I've been approaching, for example, UC San Diego, UCLA, haven't heard back from them, but it was just a phone conversation. I'm hoping that you guys understand what I've just said in a reasonable way, so I can go and explain it this way to other groups, and then get the trial, and then do, as you say, find people who have had long-term COVID, who have been on a ventilator and survived, or who have other problems, and hopefully resolve this solution, as well as finding people to do the rest of these solutions on a long-term basis of simple dietary changes or additions, and boom, we can start eliminating. John!
Yes.
There. Anyway. Is there any question? Before I go with that, so does that make sense? Does that help?
It does. It's just my friends had long-term COVID. They both lost their jobs, and they can't go from one end of their house to the other. So I was just wondering.
On the side, if you have questions, we'll discuss a little later if you wish. I admit, whenever I see someone who has COVID online, I try to do the best I can. I give them some hints about this. The only thing I neglected was, in a more constant way, you need to incorporate any of these number types of foods throughout day, week, month. Not like a ton, but you can make sauerkraut to go in with the brats night, or make unique tacos with sauerkraut. I'm from California. This doesn't bug me.
That's an ethnic atrocity if I ever heard.
You know this, and I
Look, that would not be worse than fish tacos, in my opinion.
And they have a lot of those in California.
Depends on the kind of fish. I'm allergic to at least 2 types, so.
But the whole point also is this system helps people around the globe who can't get or deal with supply and demand in storage, etc. Also, it's in a reasonable way, short of recently discovering that some of these things cause a little more problems with people with IBS, help people who have an immunodeficiency or can't take the general populace boosters from the big farmers. We're trying to help, as Dad said, that he wanted to stop the suffering of the people who have COVID and the families who are affected as well as the rest of the world, and give a chance for our first responders as well as our frontline people a chance to take it easy. There's whole groups of first responders, frontline people who refuse to take things because it will take them out of the picture for who knows how long before they get back to health. And for those, I appreciate them, and I've tried telling them. And they just look at me going, "You're an actor." I said, "No, I'm a researcher now." So I'm sorry, we'll talk later if you wish, and I will give you suggestions, and it's up to them if they want to continue it. I cannot give them any more proof or advice other than the fact that the FDA is interested. I have an approval system, but they're putting me on pause. I mean, for those who don't know, phase 3 is the level where emergency approval happens. Phase 0 is you're starting, you have a theory. Phase 0.1, 2 is, okay, you seem to have an idea. Phase 2, 3, or 2.5 something is, you're on your way, and you've gotten far enough that you're doing a clinical trial, you've proven this, and you're getting emergency approval. By the way, anyone know what time it is? Because my phone is
11:52.
So I guess I have 8 minutes. Are there any questions from the Zoom people as far as you can tell?
I missed the very first part.
Okay, what would you like to know in the first part?
I think you covered about your father.
Okay, so the first part was just explaining YT Research Associates is a private independent think tank for global problem situations, everything from sciences in physics, thermodynamics, mathematics, etc. Founded by Yuko Tomomatsu, who is the Y, who is formerly, as we say, professor, almost doctorate because of circumstances, and professional translator and interpreter for that was the original thing. Dr. Tomomatsu's original work was on fully physical, functional foods, which now has been usurped and called superfoods. Go figure. Dr. Tomomatsu, Ph.D, is one of the godfathers of heparin, has many different patents, 95 plus, as well as helped, borrowed, and it was a lot easier earlier. I need more diagnosis. So for those of you who know, he's a genius. He has had chemical formulas, organic chemistry, physics, thermodynamics expertise, and that's where we are. We've got several other ideas to help various situations such as burnt lands from wildfires, global warming, preventing typhoons, hurricanes, etc. Many of these things have already got copyrights and have patents or patent pending. Unfortunately, they have both passed away, non-COVID related, one from, I'm going to say F cancer because it was metastatic pancreatic cancer, and the other one was old age because my father at 91 years old, and our last day, which we had no idea was his last day, woke up and then went to Universal, I need paper and pencil, and he said, "Oh, Tadao." I said, what? I have to change our last report. And then I said, "Well, we just approved it, we're resending it out." And he said the most terrifying words that any lab assistant, son, or co-author will ever hear: No, I came up with the better idea. And he did. So Tomo is the T, and it's a research associates, and I guess I'm an associate. If that explains the first part, I think you missed. It was just general introduction, or full introduction of who they were.
Could you show a picture of your father again?
Oh, sure. Should I show the fun one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, all right, so this is the group, and then that's Dad.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that.
And yes, that's one of his favorite memes. I survived, suck it, Schrodinger. But he's a scientist. The reason he did this is because he proved Schrodinger wrong on something, because I was like, okay. But that's Dad's style of sense of humor occasionally. And then let me go back for a second because stop it. It's in here somewhere. Sorry, I think it's just all the technical delays from all this.
I don't need a door dragon for this one.
Yuko Tomomatsu, professional translator, NHK, circa, I don't know, because she would bop me on the head. NHK is the equivalent of the BBC. Oh, I should note on the side, my mother's translating abilities and capabilities included translating for shows such as The Ed Sullivan Show, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Dr. Killdeer, etc., and to which she had autographs from many of these people, including the Beatles. Oh my God!
Do you still have that?
No, we see that was the point. It's like she was going through. She has pictures autographed from Andy Williams and from the Ed Sullivan Group and from Napoleon Solo, and it said, and then the Beatles because they're. You have a copy of the Beatles with their autograph? I was like, yeah, but I think my sister stole it or we lost it on the way over from Japan. And I said, no, that was my college education right there. We have humor in our family. Questions, comments, suggestions, thoughts?
Could you put the slide back up that had the information on the food?
On the food.
Because I'd like to, I want to Google that and bookmark a similar list so I've got something to search. There we go. Thank you.
So on a side note, there are people who disagree with how oligosaccharides work and causes problems. And it's kind of weird because they're not really thought it through. It's a natural part of food digestion, etc. And they're recommending don't eat those. I'm kind of going, what are you thinking? It's part of the food. You can't avoid it. So be careful of some of these groups that are putting these things up as a suggestion. Don't eat. And yet, it's the same foods that you can eat as part of suggestions, question, other?
You said you're there, but did your dad work with anybody overseas, anybody else overseas or in country?
You mean on these subjects? No, because he's a genius, he's 91 years old, and he had me. So, and unfortunately, at his age, admittedly, even people he used to work with recently, like, they've all passed away. He's the last guy standing, for lack of a better term. 91 years old. I mean, even he's a black belt in kendo. He still could have whipped my butt at 91 years old. Actually, that's the funny thing. He's only 13th dan in kendo and aikido, I think. But he's like a 21st dan on archery. When you care enough to send the very best, when you have a bow and arrow as tall as your father. So yeah, that's the explanation of that. If there isn't anything else, yes.
Time.
Oh, time. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for participating, listening, and understanding. That's all for this room. Go and enjoy the rest of the convention and have fun. And thank you very much for listening.